So I would love to introduce Jeff Levine, who is the founder and CEO of a company called Advanced Scanners. And he's going to tell us about some really cool new technology. Jeff, go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a new technology for everybody. So I'll jump right in. And I don't feel like I've got to tell this audience that the United States is really on the verge of the greatest adoption of technology that the healthcare system has ever seen. Robotics, artificial intelligence, AR and VR platforms, medical imaging, they're all part of this developing infrastructure for digital surgery. And what you're looking at here is a surgical navigation system. This monitor, it displays a two-dimensional views of a 3D map of the spine that was created using the preoperative scan. These are infrared eyes, and they see these little reflective spheres over here, and they're able to look at those and infer the position and orientation of the tool so that it can superimpose that image on the map. And this is what the surgeons look at, this display, to track the position of the tools relative to the patient during surgery. There's a question: what if the map is wrong? Well, the map can become wrong for a few reasons. In this example, an MRI was used to create a 3D map of the patient's brain prior to beginning open brain surgery. But this is what the brain looks like about halfway through the procedure. This is more than an inch of shift. This is called intraoperative shift. And if the surgeon would rely solely on the navigation system, we'd completely miss the tumor and remove healthy brain tissue. This is a problem. This is a problem in every single open brain surgery due to changes in pressure and fluid loss. This is a problem in every single open brain case, and procedures are paused while the surgical team has to take new images, if they've got an intraoperative MRI, and manually update the map. Now, according to the FDA, warnings and recalls, this is a major safety issue. And what they say is that this problem is in navigation systems is leading to patient deaths, life-threatening injuries, and they go on and on to list more and more bad outcomes. And that's why we invented this optical scanner and machine vision platform. It captures intraoperative time series data on the 3D position and surface characteristics of patient anatomy. We do this in vivo, touch-free, radiation-free, and in real time. So far, we've got 2 patents issued, 15 pending, and more than 400 claims that protect our hardware, methods of analysis, and uses in medicine. Here's an example of how this might work. You imagine we've got a real patient on the left, and all I'm showing you is one bone, one vertebrae. And on the right side is going to be the surgical navigation system. So first thing we do is we take a scan, and that shows up over here. And then we're able to fit that to the patient's preoperative image and superimpose the patient's anatomy. So now when the surgeon puts the pointer of his tool on the tip of the bone, it shows up in the navigation on the tip of the bone. But if that bone moves, I know this is a dramatic movement, but if the bone were to move, on the right, the image would not change. The machine is only seeing the tool. It still thinks the vertebra where it was. And now if the surgeon goes and touches the new position, it's going to show on the right that he's not actually touching. And this is very noticeable. But our very next scan is going to capture the new position of the patient's anatomy and adjust the imaging so that it is correct again. This will be happening, in under a second by the time we get to the operating room. And that means, again, the surgeon can go right back to relying on the navigation system. It will be accurate. So let's talk about a couple of other things that happen. This is a picture of how they do the current standard of care in surgical navigation. This is Medtronic's Stealth Station. And this unit has an error on the order of millimeters, usually 2 to 4 millimeters through repeated processes. What we have shown is that optical scans can consistently improve the initial patient registration by 2 orders of magnitude. And this is important because this is the baseline error for digital surgery. It never gets any better than this. These are 2 scans taken of a cadaver brain. They're 15 minutes apart. Can you tell the difference? Our scanner can. It digitizes those images with 200 micron resolution in all 3 directions, compares them, and this is an example of the output. This is a false color map. So in the red shows where the brain has moved more than a millimeter, cyan's about half a millimeter, blue hasn't moved at all. And this is just a 15-minute change in position. We've also shown that while we can track both soft and rigid anatomy, we are also able to track the spheres, so we can alert the surgeons when registration might be lost to movement of one of these tracking devices. All of the things I've shown you have been done in coordination with Medtronic. We've got an official industry collaboration with them, where we are now using their machines. They sent us a couple, and we're playing with them in our space and actually showing our navigation with our data on their systems. We started this company in 2017, filed our IP, entered a whole bunch of contests. We won everything across the board. We participated in everything. And in 2019, we did that cadaver study that I showed. We won a bunch of other awards, both for the technology as well as our proposed solutions. We raised a seed round. In 2020, we raised a second seed round. We did our first in human by starting a relationship with HCA Healthcare St. David's hospitals here in Austin. We have approved protocols and IRBs for spine and brain cases. Medline helped us out with that by providing our drapes and helping us with sterility. And I already mentioned the Medtronic agreement. In 2021, we've been concentrating on our beta. We're turning this alpha model that's been used into the unit that we're actually going to submit to the FDA. We are lighting up a bunch of additional locations for clinical trials so we can play with our beta in that. And then in 2022, we'll submit this to the FDA for a 510K for use in neuro cases. Over the next few years, software updates and maybe some modifications to the embodiment will introduce our solutions for ENT, ortho, optical characterization of the tissue, as well as informing AI models. Usually around the time that you get your 510K approved, we expect to start being courted by every company that makes a navigation system or a device that relies on the navigation for accuracy. These companies could be potential acquirers of the whole company or verticals or marketing partners as well, development partners. I've been a lifelong entrepreneur. I've got multiple exits. I'm a former combatives officer for the U.S. Army. My co-founder, Dr. Aaron Bernstein, invented this technology. He's an internationally recognized expert in optical physics and engineering. Two of our key, of our thought leaders are Dr. Mark Lee. He's the chair of neurosurgery at West Virginia University. He's the one that pointed Aaron at this problem and implored him to solve it. It is the bane of his existence. And one of our earliest investors just recently joined the board, another neurosurgeon, Dr. Teo Dagi. He's got a career of introducing products in the neurological space. Currently, we've got 8 full-time members, and if you round out our board and advisors, we've got it all covered. I've got a 20-year veteran supporting navigation systems in the field. I've got regulatory experts with 25 years experience in medical devices, commercialization, governance. Our finance advisors, a former controller for Medtronic. So this is our team. We're anxious and ready to go deliver this product and start saving lives for patients and making surgeons' life easier. I would love to talk with anybody in the audience about their interest in the technology or possible use cases for this in their own fields. Thank you very much.
Great, Jeff. Thank you so much. Look at all those hand clapping. I mean, I love the the award there. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is very cool technology. And, I'll admit, Mike and I spend a lot of time with our entrepreneurs, our CEOs, and our founders prior to the actual pitch club. And it takes a while to understand your technology. So let's break it down a little bit. What is it about your optical imaging system that differentiates you from a traditional camera?
Okay, so a camera is part of the hardware that makes up our system. But what allows us to get the 3D data is really the patented, it's called an apparatus, a method and apparatus for scanning. So it's the geometry, and we built some custom parts. We have a custom method of illumination. We have a unique way of casting very sharp shadows that makes this a very light, inexpensive, low overhead device to make, but uniquely sensitive to data. So like our secret sauce is in the hardware, and we're developing analytics around it so that it becomes useful in the operating room. But that's our competitive advantage, and we get signals that other devices do not get, period.
All right. And I want to touch on one other thing, because when you were in your timeline, you mentioned something called optical characterization and then AI training of this device in the future. Can you talk more about that?
Briefly. So we're focused on delivering these 3D solutions, but one of the other things that our scanner is uniquely capable of doing is it's sensitive to optical properties that have been used in the lab for many years to diagnose tissue. So we're getting that, and in real time with the scans that we're taking now, and we're able to analyze that data. We're doing it after the fact now. We can automate it, but it will allow us to define tumor margins and differentiate tissue in vivo during the surgery. And this will,
Wow.
a couple of years before something's out there, but 10 years from now and a PMA away, we could be actually diagnosing tissue in real time during procedures.
Wow. All
And
right.
you asked about AI. We're collecting unique time series data on all of these procedures that we're in. So every time they take a scan, we get the data. So over tens and hundreds of thousands of cases, even in our just few years, we built up a database that can be used to train AI models to run robots and do preoperative planning.
Wow. I mean, this sounds, I would say, I'm not a surgeon, but too good to be true, right?
I hate hearing that. It's true. It's true.
All right, very good, very good. So a couple of questions from our audience. One, does this use any radiation? So what is the risk to the patient? And then another question, again, around how this works. Is this a surface scan or does it penetrate into deeper layers?
Okay. So the first question was radiation. We are radiation free. What we do is we bathe the patient in white light and we cast a shadow over the area we're scanning. So it is perfectly safe. And one of the big benefits of our device is it replaces the need for intraoperative x-rays and CT scans, which saves the surgical team.
For sure.
Your second question, we are a surface scanner. And depending on what the surface is, like anatomy, we can maybe get a millimeter or 2 or 3 deep, depending on the wavelengths of light that we choose to use. But as a surface scanner for rigid tissue, obviously, if I can spot a little bit, I know exactly where everything is. When you're looking at the brain, what's going on in the volume is certainly relevant and important. And the surface data alone is not a quite complete solution. There are existing biomechanical models of the brain that are out in the world. We're building our own, and this will be married with the patient's preoperative MRI. So as I have this biomechanical model of the brain, I know the bottom doesn't move. I know where the brainstem is, it doesn't move. And the area of greatest movement is the surface. And by having data on that, we're able to use that as a boundary condition and update this biomechanical model of the brain and recreate an entire MRI, volume included, and put that up. This replaces what the surgeon does in their head right now. They take the measurement at a couple of spots on that heat map, and you can see they differ greatly depending on where they decide to touch. They take a couple of reference points, and then they use their imagination, and after a while, get pretty good at it. But in the meantime, it's not going to be good as the million points or whatever we take on that surface scan and the computer-based models analysis in real time. We're going to make their life much easier.
I love it. So let me ask you a couple of questions around integration. So one question really was about, do you integrate into current navigation platforms, or is this only for use with Medtronic? So that's one portion of this question. And then another question, do you foresee this being integrated into robotic surgical systems in the future?
Okay, so this is a standalone piece of hardware. And what we do is we output DICOM files, which are what all the digital products in the operating room use for navigation. So each of the navigation systems, Medtronic, Stryker, BrainLab, they all have their own interface. So the benefit of us working with Medtronic and vice versa is they're the first one we built an interface with. So we're now navigating through the navigation system. We replaced those 2 infrared eyes. In some cases, they're still there now. One day we might replace them completely. But right now we can work with any device. And there are other devices like the surgical microscope, which does VR, overlays. And if you look at them now, they're always a little off, right? They're never perfectly aligned. And that's because the registration's off. And so even VR systems, microscopes and things like that, we can help make them accurate and maybe allow them to bypass the need for a surgical navigation system when they're looking directly at the tissue. We think that's a potential benefit there.
Wow.
And
I mean,
I'm
go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
sorry, remind me the second part of your question.
It really was around whether it's going to be integrated into, or do you see this being integrated into robotic surgical systems in the future?
So yeah, this should be on the tip of a robot. Again, we can miniaturize it. We'll build an endoscopic
Hmm.
version, and it should be absolutely on the tip of a robot. It'll get the best resolution, and now the robots can kind of be automated because they'll see and notice changes in anatomy.
Great.
We'll help
Well,
automate
Jeff,
them.
yeah, this seems very cool, and I will tell you a lot more questions in our Q&A. I hope folks will stick around to be able to come to our networking lounge once we're done with all the pitches, because I know Jeff would be very happy to answer all of these questions. But thank you so much for being here tonight and for sharing advanced scanners with us.